All right, Colts Nation, what is going on? Happy post-draft Monday for those of you on the East Coast and perhaps in Indiana as well. Allergy season right now in fucking full swing. I mean, my goodness, I can't catch a break out here. My eyes are itching. My nose is running. I mean, I'm having a tough time. I'm on Claritin, Dayquil. I mean, I am dosed up out here. But neither here nor there. Let's not talk about that because we have so much to talk about today. Of course, the Colts did a draft over the weekend along with the rest of the league. That's why they call it the NFL draft, not the Indianapolis Colts draft. That part goes without saying. But also, we're finally going to be giving away those paintings. Thank you to everyone that entered. 2 paintings we'll be giving away today. Of course, the prized possession, Peyton Manning on this beautiful canvas, and then also the linebacker, formerly known as Darius, Shaquille Leonard. We'll be giving both of those away. Around 160 of you entered. Thank you for that. We'll be doing a live drawing at the end of the show, which is timestamped. So if you don't want to hear anything about the Colts draft class, I guess more power to you. You could skip all the way to the end of this episode and go from there. But I want to make sure that I give you guys some in-depth analysis, or at least what I deem to be in-depth analysis of this draft class for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, one thing to keep in mind as we start to do this, okay? There is no way to actually know whether or not the Colts just had a good draft class. These dudes have not played a single snap in the NFL. All we can do is simply take the information we have about these prospects right now, the information we have about the team, try to figure out how they fit, and then apply that information the best we possibly can and just make an educated guess. Now, in some cases, like a Tyler Warren, for example, we feel pretty damn good about the guesses that we're making about how he might contribute to this team. But as you get further and further into the draft, the less certain these things become. So in terms of a draft grade, I'm not exactly sure how people can come out and say, yep, I give the Colts a B+, I give them a B-, I give them an A+, or whatever grade it is that you want to apply. Like, I don't know how that can be done responsibly, honestly, diligently, whatever the word is that you want to put there, because off of what metric are we grading this on? Like, off of what? Like, based on what do the Colts have a B+ in this draft? So if you're expecting a draft grade out of me, you're not going to get one. I refuse to take part in the tomfoolery. Before the draft, I thought mock drafts were a waste of time. I didn't do that. I think draft grades relatively stupid at this juncture, all things considered. Now, if you want to grade them in hindsight down the line, that makes more sense because you actually have some sort of criteria at that point. But right now, it's just like, yeah, we got this guy. Yeah, we got that guy. And then all of a sudden, in A+ now, and then 2 of these guys work out, it's a C+ later. Point being, no accuracy to that at all. No real insight that comes with that. But I will make plenty of observations here about the Colts' approach, number one, at large, before ultimately going on a player-by-player deep dive here and making sure that you guys have a good foundation to work off of for this rookie class for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm hoping that by the end of this episode, you'll know everything you need to know about this draft class for the Colts and more, at least at this juncture, only days removed from the completion of the draft. So I guess real quick, before I even get into my overall notes, let me not take for granted that you might not know who we drafted. So round 1, pick 14, Tyler Warren. Round 2, pick 45, JT, one of these names. I know in the press conference he said how to pronounce it. I didn't. Tuimoloau, Tuimoloau. The boy JT2 over there, because JT1's our running back. Round 3, a fellow Justin Walley. We're supporting him. Round 4, offensive tackle Jalen Travis. Round 5, running back DJ Giddens. Round 6, quarterback Riley Leonard. Are you bored yet? Round 6, defensive tackle Tim Smith. And round 7, linebacker Hunter Wohler. We're really safety converted to linebacker, but more on that later. So a few quick notes right off the bat for the Indianapolis Colts. As we just kind of alluded to, there was no real investment at the linebacker position for this team in the draft. And I think that caught all of us just a little bit off guard. Concerning on some level for sure. I certainly won't pretend that I have no questions about the position whatsoever. But with that said, I do look a bit deeper at the landscape of the linebacker position for this team, and I do feel a little bit better about it than I did on my gut reaction. Hold on, let me pull up the depth chart real quick, because I think when I do this, you guys are going to be like, well, not for anything. I kind of like that guy. I kind of like that guy. At least I know that's what I personally thought. Like, we like our guys. I'm out here sounding like Chris Ballard. But okay, Segun Olabi, number one, I actually like the way he plays. That's a physical guy. Hard nose, is going to lay down the lumber on a guy, okay? Cameron McGrone, we've seen him make some plays. Liam Anderson, we've seen him make some plays. So these guys are here. There's not nobody at the linebacker position, but at the same time, you do kind of have a lack of answers, right? Now, we know Chris Ballard at his post-draft press conference did mention, was it his post-draft or was it in the, doesn't matter. During this draft, during one of his press conferences, Chris Ballard did kind of allude to the fact that, yeah, with Smooth-Lou, we're going to see a lot more 2 linebacker sets as opposed to 3 linebacker sets. So the depth that we have, he didn't say this, now I'm just inferring this from what he was saying, is that the depth the team has can very well go a little bit further than it did when we were out there with 3 linebackers more often. And even though, again, I said no real investment at linebacker, ultimately you take all these guys that have been in the system and you toss in Hunter Wohler out of Wisconsin in round 7. And I mean, you know, the reality, here's the reality of the NFL. We're so in tune with the Indianapolis Colts that we're going to hyper focus on every single hole that this team has and say, how could you have possibly missed that? There is not a single team in the entire NFL that has all of their answers at every single position going into the season. The Eagles last year, for example, had a lot of questions at the linebacker position. And then here comes this dude, Zach Baun, out of absolutely nowhere, becoming an all-pro. Not saying that the Colts have an all-pro on this roster, not really my point. But what I'm saying is that there's not a single team in the league that has a perfect roster going into any given season. So if the Colts are going to look at this linebacker position and say, hey, we're willing to have some questions here because we have some guys that we know have been in the system, I'm not going to pretend I'm excited about it, but I'm certainly not going to sit here and make it like because of that the entire offseason has been a failure, because right now the Colts in the middle of what I consider to be a very, very strong offseason, at least on its surface. So that is a quick note right there on the linebacker position. Gosh, this is going to be a long episode. Some of you guys are going to love that. Some of you guys are going to hate that. Another quick note I noticed. At the end of last year, or really towards the end of last year, we had a lot of conversations, not just here on this channel, but really every Colts channel and the league as a whole, right? What was one of the big things being talked about with the Indianapolis Colts? Culture, winning football, the locker room. And one of the observations that I made, one of the great observations I've ever made on this channel, by the way, was a lack of players on this team that had a winning pedigree, particularly in college. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire gamut because, quite frankly, I don't feel it's necessary. And I put enough prep into this episode as was. But if you looked at a lot of the core players on the Indianapolis Colts, not all of them, but enough, and see what school they were drafted out of, these are a lot of guys that played on college teams who were average at best, whether it be at a small school or perhaps a more prestigious school, but one that wasn't like the elite of the elite. There just aren't a whole lot of guys on the core of the Indianapolis Colts that went on great runs with their team in college. And I simply raised the point when I brought that to the table. I said, hey, do we have enough guys on this team that know what winning looks like? Like, sure, it's one thing to be a good player, but it's another thing to be a winning player. Did we have enough guys that had seen the blueprint for what that looked like? With that said, if I'm to take that same point and apply it to the draft this year, a whole lot of the opposite for the Indianapolis Colts. I said allergies, apologies for the sniffles right there, but there's plenty more where that came from. Point being, JT2 Mama La 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 Lou, and Riley Leonard both played in the national title. Tyler Warren and Penn State, they did a whole lot of winning this past year. Iowa State, where we drafted Jalen Travis from, they had a real good season in their own right. Tim Smith, Alabama, the first time Chris Ballard has ever drafted a player from Alabama. I mean, shocking? Yes, but nonetheless speaks to a difference. Justin Walley, again, a fellow Justin, we're a fan. Minnesota won a bowl game themselves, so all things considered, guys that were part of programs with pretty decent amount of success in college were drafted by the Colts this year. I like that. Chris Ballard came out and said that maturity and toughness was something that this team prioritized in this draft, all that good stuff. So that's what we have at a glance for this team. But now it's time to take an even deeper dive, player by player, who they are, what they bring to the table, my initial thoughts, how they fit into the team. And then again, we'll get away to giving away those paintings. I know that's what a lot of you guys are waiting on. But before we do that, you know what it is? I got to introduce the show. My name is Justin. This right here is the Ride on the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. We want to get there by the start of next season. Audio listeners, leave a five-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show. But most importantly, be civil in the comments section. You don't know what the person on the other end of the keyboard is going through today. If someone gives a take that you don't like, take it as an opportunity to educate them. We don't want it to degrade into name-calling and nonsense. It's all about pushing the discussion further over here on this channel, and whether you agree or disagree doesn't really matter. We're all rooting for the same thing, and that is our beloved Indianapolis Colts. Even if sometimes it feels like we absolutely have a toxic love-hate relationship with this team, ultimately, we all know that we bleed blue at the end of the day. We're in this thing for the shoe. I mean, after all, it's April 28th, and we're just as passionate today as we will be in August and September and October and November, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But neither here nor there. Not really the point. Let's get back into this regularly scheduled program on that player-by-player breakdown that I promised you. And, of course, you got to start off with Tyler Warren, who projects right now to be the Colts' full-time starting tight end almost immediately. And when I say almost immediately, I'm simply buying myself a buffer. Tyler Warren will be the starting tight end for the Indianapolis Colts just like that from day one, which, quite frankly, is something that we all know this team needed and needed in a big way. Now, with that said, one of the things I did feel was a bit of a misconception about the tight end room for the Indianapolis Colts is that the tight ends on this team literally are unable to play the game of football. That isn't quite true, except for Jelani Woods, who literally has a tough time staying on the field to play the game of football. But it's not that these guys can't play at all, okay? It's more so just the fact that none of them are fit to be your full-time starting tight end. Like Mo Alley-Cox, for example, a consummate professional. He's been in the league for quite a bit of time. You're not in the league as long as Mo Alley-Cox is in the league without being a solid player. He's still going to get playing time for the Indianapolis Colts. Will Mallory, a guy that moves real well for the position, but is a bit one-dimensional in the sense that he's really just kind of there to be a receiving threat at tight end. Again, we know he's fast and shifty for the position, but can't block worth a damn. Drew Ogletree brings a bit of talent himself. The problem, again, none of those guys fit to be the starter for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts do that in a big way and get what I believe, even if not just like the top-end, best tight end prospect in the past decade, when you're talking about a complete tight end that can do it all, Tyler Warren is that guy, and he allows all of these other tight ends to fall naturally into their roles. Sometimes when guys are playing here, when they should be playing here, they don't look good. But if you move them from here down to here, they can really contribute in a big way. And this tight end room, with the simple addition of Tyler Warren, in my opinion, is one that I think we can be very, very, very comfortable with as fans in terms of guys that we know can go out there and contribute, with Tyler Warren ultimately holding it down. And my guess, Mo Alley-Cox kind of being the guy behind him, that if Tyler Warren were to, Lord forbid, get injured, that would be the worst, knock on wood. But if he were to get injured, Mo Alley-Cox could be the guy to come in and kind of fill the role overall. Next pick, JT2. I'm not even going to try with the last name anymore. Edge rusher, Ohio State. Been seeing some people peg him as a high floor, low ceiling type of guy as an edge rusher. Now, that may end up being true because, again, we don't know anything at this point. But my question, again, is the same question I had about a draft grade. By whose standard is he high ceiling, low floor? Like, how are we determining that? Based off of someone else's scouting report? Again, we haven't seen him play a snap for the Indianapolis Colts, so I don't know why all of us are accepting that as the absolute truth about this guy. JT2 is a guy who is a 5-star prospect out of high school, ended up at Ohio State, one of the most prestigious schools in the entire country, and had a very, very strong season last year. Now, during the draft, one of the analysts, English, Justin, can you speak it? One of the guys talking about the draft was mentioning some of the changes that Ohio State made during the season in terms of the way they asked their edge rushers to pursue the quarterback in terms of the angles they were taking. Essentially, they were saying, all right, at least schematically, they were asking guys to run upfield past the quarterback, and they said, no, crash in a little bit and really try to finish the sack as opposed to just funnel him inside. And if you look after that Oregon game that they noted as the one they made that change after, in 9 games played after that one, 9.5 sacks for JT2, only 1 game without a sack. They played some of the top teams in the country. That stretch included 6.5 sacks in the final 3 games of the season in the college playoffs en route to a national title. And then you actually watch him play. You go watch some highlights, watch a little bit of tape and say, okay, he has practically everything it takes physically to be a damn good player in the NFL, and his measurables, very similar actually to a Sam Hubbard, who was pretty successful with Lou Anarumo in Cincinnati, also out of Ohio State. The only difference is that JT2 is faster, stronger, more productive, at least in terms of how he played at Ohio State. And again, Hubbard turned out to be a starting defensive end in this league, not an elite one, but a good one. So you have a guy in JT2 who has the size, the strength, all the tools to be a good player. And depending on what you prioritize as an edge rusher, not for anything, I don't want to be hasty, you can argue him as a better prospect than Latu coming out of college. Maybe not quite the same bag of moves that Latu came out with. But again, the strength, the versatility, all things that are in favor of JT2. The production in college in their final season just hardly to the tune of half a sack in favor of Latu. So I think JT1's the running back. We know he's going to contribute. JT2, I think, has a chance to contribute right away and maybe even surprise a lot of Colts fans in just how much of an impact he could make. You have Latu, Kwity Paye, Samson Ebukam, Tyquan Lewis, and now JT2 fitting in to what is probably going to be a pretty solid rotation at minimum, all things considered, for the Indianapolis Colts. Again, the more I've watched this guy so far, the more I've liked what he brings to the table. I think this is a real good pick for the Indianapolis Colts here in round 2. But again, we're going to have to wait and see. Now for the round 3 pick, Justin Walley, cornerback, right off the bat, he has the Riding the Bench Colts podcast veil of protection simply off the fact that his first name, Bellissimo. Obviously, much like you, I had no clue who this guy was prior to the draft. So as I've done with all of these guys, which is why I'm getting to you on a Monday night and not immediately after the draft to give you an analysis about players, right? I'm trying to give you an honest analysis based off of some real insight that I'm trying to uncover. Nonetheless, went to watch a bit, and what I saw in short was a guy, a playmaker, pretty high motor, and then I compared it to what I saw his scouting reports say, and okay, you see some of the positives. Sticky defender in short and intermediate pass game. Plays with very good leverage and footwork. Displays great short area quickness. Does a good job sinking hips, breaking on a dime, as well as bursting out of breaks. Very good ball skills. Calm with the ball in the air. Shows a good job of locating and playing through receivers to the quarterback. Shows good timing and playing with the receiver's hands. Aggressive against the run. Files upfield or flies upfield to close ground on the ball carrier and throws his body around. Negatives. Top end speed, can taper off downfield, lacks the ideal recovery to speed to quickly get back in phase when out of position. Some inconsistencies tackling an open field. Point being is when I put all of those positives and negatives together, I said, well, okay, you have a guy with good lateral speed, but maybe not quite the type of speed that he's going to keep up with a guy down the field, the guy that's aggressive against the run, projects as a nickel corner. I said, not for anything. This guy sounds a whole lot like Kenny Moore, at least in terms of just the sheer, what you would consider to be strengths and weaknesses. So sure enough, I copy and paste that scouting report that I just read you into ChatGPT. I don't tell him it's Justin Walley. And I say, hey, can you blindly compare this scouting report to some NFL corners? And sure enough, ChatGPT fucking spits out Kenny Moore and Mike Hilton. Kenny Moore, of course, we know, but Mike Hilton, another sensational slot corner in this league who thrived under Lou Anarumo in Cincinnati. So Lou, we know, or at least some of us do, if not, I'm telling you for the first time, has an extensive background as a defensive backs coach prior to having been a defensive coordinator. Chris Hewitt from the Baltimore Ravens was another guy we brought in on the coaching staff this offseason. Longtime defensive back coach over there, and he's coached some fantastic players in the secondary in Baltimore. So those are two guys, fresh blood, coming in with expertise in the secondary, coming in and seemingly influencing Chris Ballard and the Colts to draft a guy that many people thought was perhaps a reach at this juncture and physically maybe doesn't even come with some of the ideal measurables by Chris Ballard's usual standards, but still an impressive athlete with good instincts, projects as a nickel corner. Well, all right. You get this guy in here. You got Kenny Moore on the back end of his prime, and this dude kind of under his wing. Maybe he's able to ascend a little bit, and I'm very, very curious to see how Justin Walley plays out. This is that one pick in the draft right now that, to me, just has the fingerprints of the new coaching staff on it. And my gut, personally, is telling me it's going to be a pick that we like in due time, but we're going to have to see. I think Justin Walley is someone that may very, very well be more involved early on than people think. At the current moment, outside of Kenny Moore, he's really only the only guy on the team that I wouldn't want to say a prototype. I think that's a bit strong, but the only guy that really projects well into being a consistent nickel corner in terms of his skill set. So let's see how that one plays out. Next pick, Jalen Travis, offensive tackle. Okay, a behemoth of a man, 6'8", 350 or so, looks to be a true offensive tackle, not one of these guys that you're going to try to push inside to guard, at least upon my initial look, but I'm no expert scout on the offensive line. So with that said, though, the pick right off the back, at least in theory, provides the Colts with flexibility to move Matt Gonsalves or Braden Smith inside to guard. Gonsalves, everyone talking about getting moved inside, and perhaps that's the most likely scenario. But Braden Smith, a guy right now who's had some lower body injuries, perhaps the foot speed isn't quite what it once was, a little bit easier inside on guard where you have players on each side of you in the center and the tackle, as opposed to playing outside and being on an island with some of the fastest defensive players in the – well, that's a lie. You got corners, safeties. Point being is when you're playing tackle, these edge rushers can be a handful. Braden Smith was drafted as a guard, so he might be the guy they move inside. Either way, Jalen Travis, a true tackle, which is really the point of me going into any of that. He's a true tackle, allows the Colts maybe to move Gonsalves or Braden Smith inside. Now, for whatever reason, during the post-draft presser, when they were talking about these guys, I got the feeling, just based off the answers from Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, that this was a Shane Steichen pick, not a Chris Ballard one. Take that as you may. You may think that's a good thing. You may think that's a bad thing. But when you dive a bit deeper into Jalen Travis as a prospect in terms of his physical abilities, his strengths, his weaknesses, he's actually damn near a carbon copy of Jordan Mailata in Philly, who turned into a sensational tackle for that football team and started for that team while Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator. I want you to listen to some of this comparison here in terms of measurables and 40-yard dash, all this stuff, okay? Jalen Travis, 6'8", Jordan Mailata, 6'8". Jalen Travis's weight, around 350 pounds. Jordan Mailata, around 350 to 360 pounds. Arm length, 34 and 7/8 inches. Call it 35 inches. Is that inches? Feet? Inches. 35 inches. Arm length. That's it. Is that a lot? I guess that's a lot. 35 inches on the arms for Jalen Travis. 35 for Jordan Mailata. Hand size, 10.5 for Jalen Travis. Hand size, 10 3/4 for Jordan Mailata. 40-yard dash for Jalen Travis. 4.14 seconds. Jordan Mailata, 5. Did I say 4.14? You guys fucking Bo Jackson over here? This is a terrible analysis by me. Jalen Travis ran a 5.14 second 40-yard dash. Jordan Mailata, a 5.12 40-yard dash. 10-yard split, 1.8 seconds for Jalen Travis, 1.72 seconds for Jordan Mailata. Both of them considered to be considerably above average in terms of size, strength, length, and athleticism. Given their size, the speed, also something that a lot of people speak to. But the consistency in the footwork and getting some consistent leverage, considering the fact they're so tall, these are some of the drawbacks to these players. My point really in bringing all of that nonsense up is the fact that you're kind of looking at a guy that has the physical tools of a tackle that Steichen has seen succeed in his offense, but with more of a foundation and background in football. Jordan Mailata was a rugby player and had really no football experience whatsoever. On the other hand, Jalen Travis, a 3-year starter in college. So between him, Matt Gonsalves, and Freeland, you should be able to have 2 tackles that you could plug in at any given moment on a game if you have to. This pick provides some good depth for the Indianapolis Colts with some upside into the future. Again, Braden Smith, we don't know what his future is with the Indianapolis Colts. So this pick, Just like Justin Walley had the defensive coaching staff's fingerprints all over it, this one I think has Shane Steichen's fingerprints all over it. So great. Next, DJ Giddens, running back. Now, let me just give you a little disclaimer. I can't tell if what I'm about to say is a product of the fact that the game on offense in the NFL is just a bit more exciting to the eye. Like defense in the NFL is much like grappling in the UFC. If you're a fan, you know how important it is. You know it's a key component of the game. In fact, you can even grow an appreciation for someone being good at it the more you watch it. But just like the best fight you've ever seen isn't some two people hugging each other or something like that, it's them standing and trading blows. The best football game you've ever seen is a shootout with great offense, not some sort of 13-10 defensive battle. I say all of that to simply admit the bias that I have for the offensive side of the football before I say this. I really like what I'm seeing out of DJ Giddens on tape so far. This dude is fast, he's shifty, he's explosive, at least capable as a receiver. So he had 21 receptions this past season for Kansas State, 12.4 yards per catch, ranked number 4 in the nation amongst running back. Now, on one side, you do want to temper expectations because he's a 5th-round rookie. But on the other side, there is the reality that draft position for a running back hardly matters outside of the first 2 rounds. And when you look at the Colts backfield right now with Jonathan Taylor, Khalil Herbert, who they picked up in this in the free agency class, Tyler Goodson, Giddens really has a chance to push for a 3rd down role on this team if he comes in and impresses in training camp and preseason. So we're going to see how this one plays out. But again, 5th round for a running back, you know, there's a lot of running backs, if you go through it between rounds 4 and 7, that have contributed at a high level in the NFL. A lot of them. It's not the rule, but it's certainly not an exception either. Like this guy, he looks good on tape. That's my point. He looks good on tape. A guy a while back that the Colts drafted at running back late that I really, really liked was Jordan Wilkins, and he came in and was pretty damn good for this team. So let's see what DJ Giddens brings to the table. Chris Ballard brought up guys like Marlon Mack, and really Marlon Mack, the only one I remember him saying, but there was another guy as well. Again, I think they have high hopes for Giddens, and not for anything based off of what I've seen. I think behind this offensive line, in this offense with Anthony Richardson at quarterback or Daniel Jones at that, both of who are a threat to run, I think Giddens has a chance to contribute early and often. Next up, Riley Leonard, quarterback. Notre Dame kid, claims the only team he wanted to play for was the Indianapolis Colts. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not true. But being a quarterback on a team in Notre Dame that makes it to the national championship is absolutely worth something. It may not be worth a whole lot, but again, it's worth something. And ultimately, this is a developmental backup quarterback. We don't hate that at all. Going to Notre Dame, same college as Joe Montana. Being a 6th-round pick, same round drafted as Tom Brady. Riley Leonard, future Hall of Famer? Perhaps. Perhaps not. In actuality, he's going to battle with Jason Bean for the QB3 spots. That's what you're looking at right here. One of those 2 guys is going to end up on the practice squad. Tim Smith, defensive tackle, is next out of Alabama, the first Alabama player ever drafted by Chris Ballard. Playing at a school like that, right off the bat, you have to have a level of hope if you're a fan with that pedigree that he can develop into a depth piece, a rotational piece, maybe even develop into a starter a few years down the line. We'll have to see, but the Colts had to have liked him enough. So their senior assistant defensive line coach, Matt Reich, I'm so bad with names. Point being is one of the coaches on the Colts was the American team's defensive coordinator in the Senior Bowl this past season. So he got some hands-on experience coaching Tim Smith, seeing him in person, seeing how he worked, and to the point where it led to a top 30 visit with the Indianapolis Colts. And now here he is with the team. So, okay, he's at the bottom of the depth chart for sure, but not a ton of proven defensive tackle talent on this team outside of Buckner and Grover Stewart, who are as proven as defensive tackle talent comes. From there, you have Tim Smith, who we just drafted, Neville Gallimore, Adebaware, who is a 4th rounder from 2023, but he's not exactly like a run-stuffing type of guy. And then some dude named Darius Payne, who we got off the Texans practice squad last year. Well, all right, Tim Smith, you have a chance to work yourself into that rotation, my friend, at least as per my estimation. We'll see how it goes. Next pick, last pick, Hunter Wohler, now linebacker, out of Wisconsin. Interesting pick for me. for a number of different reasons. Number one, as I said at the top of the show, the Colts came into the draft with all of us looking at that linebacker position, with Chris Ballard himself literally claiming going into this draft that they would add to this position, they would add depth and competition to linebacker. I can't ignore that. Now, instead of that coming into fruition, they bring in a safety turn to linebacker, which has become a popular trend in the NFL today, and for good reason. The 49ers very, very popular for doing this type of thing, most notably with Fred Warner, who has really become the prototype for what you want out of a modern NFL linebacker. The Colts did the same thing last year with Jalen Carlies, who was a safety that they got in, what was it, the 5th round, I think, off the top of my head. Looks like he's about to get a crack at the starting job going into this season, but we're going to see how this one develops with Hunter Wohler. In theory, position changes like this, when you're going from safety to linebacker, make a whole lot of sense. Like if you have a safety in college who may not have the coverage ability or the speed to play on the back end in the NFL like he did in college, but then you move him to linebacker, all of a sudden you have a guy that's a supreme athlete at the linebacker position that is great in coverage for that position. He led Wisconsin in tackles for 2 straight seasons now and did play a little bit of linebacker there as well. So really the question is he going to embrace the physicality and be a sure tackler in the league like he was at Wisconsin? If he can, you're talking about a guy right now in Hunter Wohler who has an opportunity to contribute on special teams just like that immediately and work his way up. Remember, Zaire Franklin, also a former 7th round pick. So the idea that Hunter Wohler could eventually be a contributor for the Colts down the line, not something that's out of the question, but I would not expect much more than special teams work early on. But in theory, again, I like the archetype. I like the idea of going safety to linebacker, particularly if you're going to get a guy late in the draft. If you need a guy to play off the ball, or in other words, a guy that you need to cover tight ends, running backs, and drop in the zone at the linebacker position, the idea of dropping a safety down into that spot is really not a bad move. Now, again, the likelihood is that you have a special teams player and practice squad guy here, or even cut, but you never know. And that right there is just about everything a couple days out that you need to know about the Colts draft class. But without further ado, let's get into the giveaway. Silence for those on the audio side of things. Just Justin trying to share his screen. And bing, 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 bing. All right, here comes the wheel of names. Let me make sure that is up. It is. Okay, so what you're looking at is a very, very colorful spoke. If you're watching, you might even see your Twitter handle, your X handle on the right side. Every one of those colors represents an entry into the giveaway. So with that said, we're going to do the first spin. The first winner will be winning. We're going to save it for suspense. Sorry, because I know whoever wins this one's going to be like, I wish I won Peyton. The first one is going to be the linebacker formerly known as Darius, Shaquille Leonard. The way we're going to do this is the Twitter handle is going to come up. I'm going to say, hey, man, you won. And then I'm going to try to message you on X and try to get your damn address so I could send it to you. And if not, I'll have to figure that out when the time comes. But with that said, the first winner, the winner of a Shaquille Leonard canvas, a gorgeous, gorgeous painting is Lowry Leona 86826. Congratulations. You've won that painting of Shaquille Leonard. I'll message you on X, and we'll go from there. Now, next, the prized possession. Peyton Manning, canvas, and that'll be it. And then we'll end the episode from there. We're going to do the spin. It took a little bit longer to complete, but I like that. I don't mind the dramatic effect. Drum roll, please. Playing as Wayne. Congratulations, brother. You have won the painting of Peyton Manning. Again, I'm going to message both of you guys on X. Try to get you this thing. We're going to work it out. P.O. box address, whatever it is. I'll make sure to get that thing sent over ASAP Rocky. And if not, we're going to give it away to someone else. But that right there was an episode. Everything you needed to know about the 2025 Indianapolis Colts draft class. Until next time, my name is Justin. This right here is the Ride the Bench Colts podcast. And as always, go Colts.